Gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I truly appreciate this hearing. I think it's incredibly important. I think before we begin, just to be clear, the people that we're talking about that attacked the Capitol live within our borders. Some of them are coming from our neighborhoods and our communities across the country, and that's why this hearing is so incredibly important. I also want to repeat, as I continue to repeat over and over again, that immediately after the aftermath of this attack, I hear people talking about new surveillance powers, talking about the possibility of increasing national security powers and those kinds of things. It is incredibly important that no matter the intention, history shows us that every time we give our government new powers in this area, they are inevitably used to target people that look like me, oppressed people of color, and minority groups across our country, not those that attacked our Capitol. Director Wray, in your testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee, you stated, and I quote, "The attack, the siege was criminal behavior, plain and simple, and it's behavior that we, the FBI, view as domestic terrorism." Is that correct?
Sounds like a correct quote of what I said in front
Sure.
of Senate Judiciary.
So some of my colleagues, Director, are calling the January 6th, some of them just look away and are calling them normal tourist visits or activities to the Capitol. Did you hear that false description before?
I have been asked about that, and I wouldn't describe it that way.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, that's how, again, January 6th attacks have been described in the past, and it's really to downplay, excuse, and otherwise defend this really violent attempt to overthrow our democracy and the Constitution itself. By doing that, I very much believe colleagues are endorsing those actions. Director Wray, what would happen if you do not hold those that were responsible for January 6th accountable? What do you think would happen?
Well, Congresswoman, I think it's one of the things that defines our country is a respect for the rule of law. And there is a right way and a wrong way to express your unhappiness, your anger, your disagreement under the First Amendment. And that does not include violence against law enforcement, destruction of federal property, and the kind of behavior that we saw in this Capitol on January 6th. And so, to me, the rule of law is at stake, and that's what we're trying to make sure that we enforce. The ends do not justify the means, no matter how much people. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you think, Director Wray, that it would enable people to continue those efforts? That it would enable what we would some refer to white supremacist groups, domestic terrorist groups here? Do you think it would enable them to continue to attack our Capitol and our democracy if we did not hold them accountable?
I think if the criminal laws are not fairly and aggressively enforced, and if domestic terrorism is not fairly and aggressively pursued, then I think it will not only continue, but grow.
In March of this year, I don't know if folks on the panel know, but the Director of National Intelligence released an unclassified report titled, quote, "Domestic Violent Extremism Poses Heightened Threat in 2021. The report identified the, quote, emboldening impact of violent breach of the U.S. Capitol as a development that would, quote, almost certainly spur domestic violent extremists to try to engage in violence this year." Director Wray, yes or no, do you agree with DNI's assessment?
Yes, we contributed to that assessment and share it.
Do you believe, Director, that continued attempts to discredit the November elections, such as the absurd Arizona recount and recent reports that the former president believes that he will be reinstated, he still says this could potentially have similar effects?
Well, certainly I think there's a whole range of things out there that are contributing. As
do you think it enables that narrative that folks had a right to come here? They had a right to come here and attack our Capitol and our democracy.
I've tried to steer clear of weighing in on different people's speech just because of my role. I certainly understand why you're asking.
Director Wray, it's really scary to believe, because I truly believe this. Do you think if the people in that crowd looked brown or black majority, do you think that we would be here in this hearing right now?
It's that's hard for me to say. I can tell you, we FBI.
Do you think the riot
standard.
gear would have showed up? Do you think the National Guard would have been called? Because what I
really
saw
can't.
when Black Lives Matter protesters were here and those defending their right to choose, it seemed like all of a sudden, all of y'all had resources. Y'all had a plan then. Why is it when white supremacist terrorists show up here to want to lynch the vice president, to attack the speaker, to attack our democracy, threatening the lives of members of Congress, but really the lives of just our whole livelihood in our country, that no one seemed to want to show up?
Well, Congressman, I can only really speak to the FBI's role. And my view is we have one standard and we've tried to apply it consistently in both situations.
Thank you. I yield.
The gentleman.